everybody. It's Hallie Hara. Thanks for joining me today. Today's topic is professional identity formation and why it's important. Why should we care about professional identity formation? So, I would just want to start off the bat with just sort of a general sense of what professional identity formation is and what isn't. So, for those of you in law school, you know that if you've taken professional responsibility, there are all sorts of rules and standards governing attorney conduct, governing what is ethical within the legal profession. This is not that. This is something actually much more personal. It has to do with who you are and who you want to be as an attorney. And basically, what's your story as an attorney? What do you want it to be? And how are you going to relate to the different stakeholders in the legal system? So again, very different from those canons of professionalism. This is more about why you came to law school and what you want to do with your legal career. And the reason it's getting talked about a lot these days is because the ABA, the governing body that accredits law school, the accrediting body, I should say, for law schools has some language telling law school that this is important, that this should be part of the curriculum. So the ABA says a law school shall provide substantial opportunities for students for the development of a professional identity. So the question is, what exactly does that mean? So the ABA is working on some language to provide some depth to the meaning of professional identity. And the language being talked about currently is that professional identity includes, but is not limited to, the knowledge, skills, values, morals, goals, and personality traits considered foundational to successful legal practice. And the ABA says, you can't treat this as a one-off. You can't have one professional identity formation course and feel like you're serving the students well. Instead, there should be frequent opportunities and they should start in the first year. So it has to go across the curriculum, can't just live in sort of the career services world. It should be part of what you do as a law student, part of your education. And so the ABA says, this requires student reflection and growth over time. So considering this language, to me, someone who works in externships, there is no greater canvas to paint on than externships to figure out who you want to be as a professional. So professional identity formation, to me, is a perfect topic to address during your externship. And that's what we're kind of talking about today. But the catch is that this isn't such an easy thing to teach, right? It's not like I can stand up here and teach you the same way I can teach you even legal writing or a doctrinal subject. I can't teach you who you are, but the way to foster it, the development, is through experience. And as I said, experiential learning, externships, the clinic, maybe your simulation courses, these are all great opportunities to learn about who you are. So Harvard has done some work on this in the Center on the Legal Profession, and you can find this just on their website. But again, I know your time is limited, so I've curated some of this content for you. But basically what they talk about is the sociological concept of role distancing. So having your life, the best way I could say it is having your life compartmentalized, who you are in your personal life and who you are in your professional life appear to be very different if you have role distancing or substantial role distancing. And what they found by studying lawyers over time is that those who go into public interest careers come into law school with a certain political, racial, gender, religious roles, and those students are more likely to maintain their identity if they go into public interest careers. Conversely, those who go into firm careers have some distancing from their professional identity. Some people, myself included, end up going the firm route who never thought that didn't come to law school for that purpose, right? Never thought that was going to be the route for them. So they feel some sort of sense that, oh, this is temporary. I'm just doing it to pay my loans, or I'm just doing this to get experience. And that, in that sense, they feel a bit fraudulent about representing that this is who they are. And so there's a bit of distance between who they are as professionals and who they are in their personal lives. And then, so the question is, how can we make sure that we're addressing the whole person in law school? And, what their research shows, of course, is what we already know, that there's a focus on doctrinal material, understandably, in law school. And we focus on legal analysis, but we don't always look at the social context of some of the things that we're learning, which may help us form our professional identity. So everybody has their why, right? Why they came into law school. And that's at the forefront of your mind when you get that acceptance letter and when you enroll, and even when you're getting your books and gearing up for your first classes. But at some point during the journey, many students, in fact, the typical student, switch to a game-oriented mindset as opposed to a justice-oriented mindset. And what does that mean? It means that we're fighting for that A. We're under the mindset of we have to zealously represent our client at all costs. We have to win, right? And so the goal is to kind of reset our foundation so that we have an integrated sense of professional identity among all new lawyers, right? All new lawyers kind of go into the profession knowing who they are, where their lines are, right? And not having a huge difference between who they are when they volunteer on the weekend and who they are in the office. There's a great article that actually came out well before this sort of became a hot topic in the Legal Academy, and that's by Mary Walsh Fitzpatrick and Rosemary Queenan, and it's called Professional Identity Formation, Leadership, and the Exploration of Self. And the article, consistent with everything I've been saying, is about how individual values fit with professional values, but they go a step further and look at how your life experiences and values contextualize your practice. So their position is that you can advocate and counsel clients in a way that includes your values. Those don't have to be separate. And it increases lawyers' effectiveness and satisfaction. So let's just say that you are a corporate attorney, but you came into law school feeling very strongly about taxes. Maybe you grew up having benefited from some social programs that are paid for through taxes, and you feel strongly about those. But in your role as an attorney, you are advising corporate counsel how to take advantage of a tax loophole that results in them paying very little tax. Okay? It's legal. You can do that. There's certainly nothing wrong with it. But my question to you is, year after year after year, right? If you are counseling people on how to not pay taxes, right, or get a huge break on their taxes, how are you going to feel about your job, right? If those social programs are so important to you, right, and you found a way for your clients not to support the social programs, how are you going to feel about that? Because your career satisfaction is important. And if you're going to continue in the job where you advise corporate counsel on these tax loopholes, you have to have some tools in your toolbox that are going to make you feel better about your work. So this all begins with a foundational asking, who are you, right? And what's your story? Because every chapter of our lives that brings us to law school really has an impact on the type of attorney we will become. The research shows that those who know themselves well are more likely to find a satisfying job. Common sense, right? And just what I said, you don't always have to agree with your client's position, but you do need tools in your toolbox to help you cope when there's a divergence between your values and your client's interests. So that involves self-awareness, resilience, and courage to figure out where your line is and where you won't allow any work or anybody to step over. So you have to start somewhere. And I think the perfect place to start is figuring out, okay, professional identity formation is something I'm interested in. I do see the value in my overall career satisfaction. So I'm going to be mindful of it. I'm going to be aware of it. And I'm going to have some materials for you, particularly if you're a student in my course, where we're going to look at different leadership models and kind of walk you through figuring out what your values are as an attorney. But this is really, really important work. I'm happy to talk to you about it. I feel very strongly about it. And, I thank you for listening today and hope you give it some thought. Have a great day. Thanks.